Hello, everybody. Receiving Ed for Rich Napolitano. I'm going to propose to change the agenda. I'll make a motion that we modify the agenda to add item 4A, approval of the minutes of May 22nd, 2023. We did not take action on that because there was a question. I have a second to that. Ed? Yep. Any discussion? All those in favor of modifying the agenda? 1, 2, 3, 4. Larry, not.
I'm not seated.
Oh, I'm sorry, then I'm seated. Forgive me. I forget who's that.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, for the record, because I think Josh is going to be recording this from, or he's going to be taking minutes when you're recording.
Okay,
So if you just want to formally note who's here and who's seated.
okay, I'll note that. And let me back up. Let me go back to the seating of alternates. Forgive me though. So I will seat you for Walter Tabor. Okay. Larry Preston. So we have Justin Riendo, Edmund Rack, Tom Currier, Vera Engler, myself, Rick Nassif, Larry Preston, and Don Schofield here attending. Thank you. So I'll restate. So I'll make a motion under item 3 to add 4A May 22nd minute of 2023 minute approval. And that was seconded by Ed. Any discussion? None. All those in favor? Now, okay, that's unanimous. So the minutes of June 12, 2023, I'll make a motion that we, any corrections or modifications. I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of June 12, 2023 as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Everyone's in favor. Don,
You're
you're
not seated. Am I?
you're not an alternate, you're a regular member, aren't you?
No.
I apologize. Do we have 3 alternates?
Yeah, we have 3 all.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Used to be a number, now.
Yeah, Larry.
I know you used to be a regular.
Yeah, you come and go. My apologies. Okay, so that's unanimous in favor of approving the minutes of June 12, 2023. Then, item 4A, the minutes of the May 22nd meeting. There was a question whether Vera had attended that meeting, and Josh looked into it, and he did not have her as attending, so the minutes as they were presented would stand as accurate. So I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the May 22nd, 2023 meeting as presented.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. That would be Justin, Ed, Tom, and myself are voting in the affirmative. Larry? In the affirmative. You're,
And I'll abstain, seeing I probably wasn't.
okay,
here, and I
you're
never-
abstains. Okay, thank you. Audience of citizens, anything anyone would like to bring up to us that isn't already on the agenda?
You can't either.
Okay,
Cemetery.
we're opening a public hearing on the application by Steve Harrington, SBH Investments. For site plan and special permit applications for farmers market and outdoor entertainment accessory to restaurant use at 68, 94, 98, and 66 East, map 8, lot 1, 9, lot 1, and lot 10, lot 80, for sections 31.2.5, 31.3.4. That said, Mr. Harrington, would you like to speak to your application?
Sure. The site plan for the farmer's market, I believe, was already approved.
Yes,
The sluice, for anybody that isn't familiar with it, is approximately 14-foot high water tower that's, I believe, around 6 feet in diameter. And then it has a water trough that's, say, a foot wide that goes down maybe 30 feet. And kids can buy a little bag of not, I don't wanna say gold, it's not gold, it's fool's gold and other gardens, whatever. And they can pan for gold and, go against the chart, see if they found this little thing for kids. It doesn't make any noise.
Okay,
It's not really much to tell about it. Doesn't take up that much space either.
okay. Thank you. Anything? We have received some correspondence that were distributed to the commission, will be part of the packet. There was a letter from Brandy Hollister. It's lengthy. I'm not going to read it into the record. There was also an email received about the site from Carol McLean, I believe it was. And those will be going into the minutes as part of the record. Has anyone reviewed any of those or any questions?
I just printed the one copy of the email that came in recently from Carol McLean, who is online. I don't want to put her on the spot, but she is online.
Okay,
But everyone did get a copy of the letter from Hollister.
okay.
I don't, after you have questions from the commission, I just have a couple of questions for clarification received.
Okay, any questions from the commission on the application? No, I don't think we do have any. If you do, and then I'll open it up to public comment or question.
I just to clarify, clarification that some people were wondering, the sluice is going to be placed on you, and there's another LLC that owns 3 consecutive properties, 68, 94, and 98, right?
It's all my family.
And so the restaurant itself, Main Moose, is on 68.
The main moose is on 94.
94, okay, thank you. The sluice is going to be placed on 98, correct?
Keeping in mind 96, 98 used to be the duplex that was demoed, so it's 98,
Okay.
94, 98.
And so, whereas the sluice is not on the same property as the Main Moose, which is also not the same property as your larger activity, like
They have joint ownership.
but they have joint and overlapping ownership and function essentially as the same activity center that's sort of mutually supporting. So,
Yes, it does.
which is why all 3 addresses are on this application. The other thing I just, there was a question we received about water use for the sluice. My understanding is the sluice is, it basically,
It holds about 300 gallons.
but it's recirculating, right? It's not pumped from a well and discharged into a septic system.
No,
It's recirculating.
there's
So,
no discharge. Evaporation, I suppose.
yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, I'm gonna open this up to public comment. If you could indicate your desire to speak, just with regard to public comment during public hearings, we ask that you state your first and last name, your property address. Only speak when you've been identified as the speaker by myself. And if you could direct the questions to the commission, and then it's up to the applicant if it's something that they want to address, whether they address it at that point. So is there anybody who, I don't see any members of them? Josh? Oh, he's not, he's just recording.
He's gonna listen to this.
Okay, report.
Right, well, I'm taking minutes.
Am I correct? No members of the public.
There is one member of the public signed in as Caroline McLean, but if she'd like to speak, she can unmute herself.
Would anyone like to speak?
Who's seated for both?
There he is.
I understand it.
There he is.
I thought it was Rich.
I think Ed said seated for Rich and Larry said.
I'm in for Rich. Yeah, he's Rich and I'm Bob. All right, and we're just sure.
Thank you.
Okay, doesn't appear to be any comments from the public. Or
I do want to
questions.
speak if, when you gentlemen are ready.
We are ready. I don't hear, could you please identify yourself and then say
Yes.
your address?
Of course. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you just fine, thank you.
All right. My name is Carol Ann McLean. I reside at 54 Route 66 East. Since these properties in the commission's eyes are combined since your last vote, I will refer to them as SVH Brand Properties, whose owners are Angela Brand, Matthew Brand, and Steve Harrington. Collectively, they are from what the town planner has stated in need to come in compliance. Well, I'm a little confused because Steve Harrington lives in somewhat, people say, a nice home on the lake. And he serves on the Lake Commission, which is one of their responsibilities as a commission member, is to monitor that folks are in compliance. So how is he not in compliance in another area of town? And why is he taking essentially charity from taxpayers of the town and not having to pay the permit fee as every other small business?
Okay,
Carol, we muted you.
so a point of order here. I'd ask you to only bring up issues that are germane to this application and this use of this property. Nothing about personalities or other real estate owned in the town. It's just not germane. It's not what we consider. We're considering an application for this sluiceway on this property, and that is it. So if you would like to speak to that, please do not address non-germane topics.
I'm gonna ask you to now unmute yourself. There you go. Thank you.
So, but we're talking about the three properties as well, because you're talking about them as whole. And the main concern for us is 68 that's next to our properties. Is that correct? Okay. So what it's looking like is that they're looking to have parking on more on 68 because they don't have that availability on the lower end properties by the restaurant. But we see no traffic study to prove that they have adequate parking for these activities and that vehicles will not be parking along the road and in the wetlands or the watershed. This is also a dangerous area along 66 East going west, as the speed limit is too fast and turns and has blind spots when people are turning into the restaurant. I'm also concerned about any practices that may alter the quality of life at my home. They have previously recorded a plan that shows a campground on this parcel next to our homes, and we do not want that. Already today, we have been having activities of excavating next to our homes at 3 o'clock in the morning. We now know it's excavating, and I brought it to the commission's attention last month. And they've also been doing other things. Well, this is related to this application. These are things that are going on that are impacting the residents along this property. And for some reason, your commission is not interested in knowing how we're impacted by this application. So, you know, if we're not able to speak and talk to the commission on this application, we're just being muted. So may I finish?
I would appreciate it if you would keep your comments to the specifics of this application.
The specifics include 68, sir. So that is what I'm talking to you about, and that's what's important to us. Okay.
Are you familiar with what this application is for? This is to add a 14.5-foot tall sluiceway on the property, on the designated property. That's what this public.
And you're asking for extra parking on 68, which makes it the whole site. So you're gonna mute me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll add this to the record. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Requested by this applicant. That's what this public hearing is about.
Yeah.
There's other issues that you would like to address that you feel are germane to the property. And if you feel it's a compliance issue, then contact our zoning enforcement agent. But this application is about the sluiceway. If you feel
And we were told when they put this map out in zoning, but this is the part of the hearing where I'm permitted to also speak.
Ask you to let me finish talking and then I'll let you talk. But if you want to try and overtalk me, then we won't unmute you the next time. So with regard to this, if you would like to speak to what's in this application and its impact on your property and its impact on the property in general, that's fine. If there are other issues that you felt compelled to bring up, this is not the forum for that. This is the forum for this application, for this specific modification to the site plan. I'm all set.
If I might, just before I also unmute Carol, she is correct that the property number 68 is involved in this application insofar as, per the site plan, a portion of the lot number 68 or property number 68 will be used for overflow parking as needed for the main Moose and associated Sluiceway thing. So it is involved. However, elements of excavation or the campground, which was never actually a filed application for anything, is not related to this. But insofar as there is some overflow parking proposed,
Okay,
68 is
I appreciate the clarification.
sure.
Is 68 owned by the applicant or by the person who's calling in right now?
68 is owned by the applicant. Miss McLean owns 54, I believe, which is 2 doors down from the easterly extent of 68, which is a large parcel.
Okay. If you want to unmute, Ms. McLean.
So what I would like to get to is that 68's activities with the excavating, the helicopter landings, and the water issues that we're having is because he's trying to prepare the property for the applications that he's coming before your board with. And they're impacting our properties. And I'm very disappointed in the commission that you don't find these issues important. And I was told when this map was presented to zoning, when I made a copy of the map, that we would have a time to speak at a public hearing, which that was a complete false statement. We're not allowed to talk about this at all with you. I couldn't really talk to you about it last time, and this time you're just continually muting me. I find it very inappropriate. And the fact that Mr. Harrington did not have to pay a permit fee on this application is even more disturbing, because that's just charity from the town of Columbia. Thank you.
That said, there's a number of statements that you've made are inaccurate. We normally don't point those out, but there was a special permit fee that he did pay for this sluiceway.
No, he did not.
Oh, I apologize. I wasn't very nice.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
So thank you. All right, I'm leaving the meeting because you guys are not even all on the same page. So thank you very much. I'll submit my testimony in writing for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Harrington, the 47 Sleepy Hollow Road, Columbia. Just for the record, I paid a $460, I believe, or $450 permit fee, building permit fee for the sluice. And then when this all came up that it needed to go to a special permit, I guess they waived that for me. Thank you.
I had applied, to clarify, I had initially applied a portion of the building permit fee, which he paid for first, to the special permit fee to cover that. And then if that got approved, then we would go back to the building permit issue after, because you can't pull the building permit until you get the zoning permit.
Okay.
But then the first selectman went ahead and waived the permit fee. And so then the portion that had been applied to the special permit fee went back to his building permit fee.
Is there, at this point, I feel that I don't have any other questions. I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Does anyone, I don't know.
I'm sorry, was there anyone else who wanted to speak to this?
Well,
Oh, of course, I'm sorry.
I'd like, because you kind of, the 3 AM excavating, what is she talking about?
No, one night, months ago, I had brought in millings at night. They were milling the road somewhere in Manchester, and they were milling at night. And the dump trucks dumped 4 loads of millings on my property at probably whatever time she says. But
One time.
I am in bed at 8 o'clock. I'm not there at 3 o'clock in the morning running machines. That is just crap. And I don't know what else to say. Nobody is excavating there in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I wasn't going to address that because that's not part of this application. This is about the sluice way. I tried to keep us focused on only the topic at hand.
Okay,
And to that end, and a number of the other things.
I got a question for the applicant. Just to clarify, so everybody's on the same page here. The sluice is going on what part? Is this where you got the big tent set up on that parcel right there where you park the fire trucks and stuff?
Between the tank and the road.
Right in that area. So it's not all the way down at that end.
It's
It's not.
far away from.
So there's no different other activities besides the normal parking that happens there and what normally happens at the Moose, right? Nothing.
There's nothing that happens way over there, nothing, except when I
Okay.
run.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Patch between there. and
Right,
the
'cause I
pond.
don't want people starting to think there's the wetlands over there and then there's this. I just wanted to get it clarified for everybody. It's right here on this map that he's drawn where it's located.
Any other questions, you commission? I'll make a motion that we close.
Well, I just wanted to clarify one thing, not to be the dead horse here.
Yeah,
Larry was seated for Walt Tabor. There's nobody seated for Bob Powell.
good point. I'll see
Okay,
now.
just so I can
We
vote.
don't have to restart the whole meeting.
The three members that are missing, Bob Powell, Napolitano and Tabor.
Sure.
So you have three missing out, so the three seated.
You're
I apologize, Tom. Now you can talk.
Yeah.
Hope that's appropriate that I see you out of order like that, but so I'm gonna make the motion that we close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
And for the record, I would have voted to approve the minutes too.
The under unfinished business, we have item 6.1, Steve Arrington, SVH Investments, site plan and special permit applications for farming market. Well, this is for the modification to their site plan for the sluice way. Special permit, excuse me. And this is actually on lot 68, correct? 90.
It's not 98, but again, the three properties sort of function together because Main Moose is the restaurant, which has a special permit. And that's on
Then
94.
68, 94, 98, and 66.
And so the new activity proposed on 98 in support of 94 with
Okay.
parking to support it also from 68.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the application as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Not all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and I wanted special thanks to Steve Everett for waiving the fee. That was appreciated.
Yeah, very much so, thank you.
And so I will note just for the record for the commissioners, we received a number of complaints about the properties that have been directed to zoning or wetlands as appropriate, but yeah.
Okay. Nothing under new business,
I have money business.
regulation revisions. So we're gonna have Justin, you wanna?
Yeah,
Yeah, but we had a subcommittee meeting just prior to the meeting today.
yeah, I'm gonna give you guys a summation of kind of where we're at. I would love your input. I'll kind of tell you with the next meeting, prior to the next meeting, what I want to do is get this on paper and kind of have you guys review it so that you can give some more thoughtful input, and then we can start moving the process forward. But essentially, a couple things to start. Walt and Rick and I have met on several occasions. John's been extraordinarily helpful with clarifying things and bringing some really good ideas into the fold as well. But we're looking at the overall purpose of just making life easier for residents and businesses, so that people can do reasonable things without the current burden of time, money, and stress. You know what, I look forward to having a discussion with everybody to get your thoughts on the regulations themselves. Obviously, we've been reading them in depth a lot over the past several months, and I think there's a lot of low hanging fruit that we continuously need to look at and improve, and that's kind of the tack that we're taking. That's the approach that we're taking, because I don't think the regulations are currently serving the public well. And that should be really our focus, is to make sure that they're serving the public well. They do what they're intended to do, and they don't create excessive burdens, whether people are residents or businesses, we have to look at it holistically. So in the beginning, we talked about having this as a subdivision focus. We're still focusing on subdivisions, but really what we've been able to do is kind of focus on 3 other aspects for various reasons, because they're important and they're things that if we can change, will make life easier for everyone. But also because of some contemporary situations that have arose that really require us to look at things, I think. And these were the 3 that kind of came to the surface. So the first was the definition of a structure. So Walt and Rick and I, with John's assistance, have looked at how we currently define a structure. And obviously with a structure, there can be up to 3 permitting processes. You have Eastern Highlands, you have a building permitting process, you have a zoning permitting process. And one of the, I'm not going to read the current definition, I'll put all this stuff in writing so you guys have more time to kind of soak it all in. But basically the way that a structure is defined in our current regulations is there's no limiting factor to it. It's really completely up to interpretation. If I go and research how to get what I need to get a building permit for, I know that it's a minimum of 200 square feet. There's certain criteria, and some things you do not need a building permit, some things do, and that's very clearly delineated. Whereas a zoning permit, it is not. The first sentence is a structure, anything constructed or erected to the use of which requires location on the ground or attachment to something having location on the ground. I mean, the definition is longer than that, but that's the essence of it. So what that does is it leaves things up to interpretation and confusion, both on the part of residents as to what they need for a zoning permit, and also in enforcement. It can be a burden on enforcement because what do we enforce? What do we allow? And how much is that up to the interpretation of the staff here? So what we're looking to do is just make it clearer, like a building permit is. There's a square footage delineation, or what we've also looked at is because so many things have fallen under a zoning permit, whether it be a satellite dish or a tower or whatever, we create a box basically. And if something fits within the box, does it really need a zoning permit? If it's larger than that imaginary box, yes, it would need a zoning permit. So we've tossed around different ideas, and we've come up with a working definition, which I'll get to everyone so that you have time to review it. And so that we can get input and try to go through the process moving forward with making these regulations better. So that's one of the 3 that we've tackled. I'll just pause there for a second in case anybody has questions. If it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I just want to add, one of the thoughts here is, we had a conversation about this at our last meeting. How do we make it easier to do business with the town? You know, how do we shed the reputation that Columbia is a difficult place to get your projects done in? And I'd rather turn that around 180 degrees and have people say, yeah, reasonable stuff you can get done with a minimum of fanfare and expense. I want everyone to feel the town hall is a customer friendly place. And it starts with the regulations. I'm not saying the people aren't friendly. We have wonderful people in the building office, but we have to make our regulations easier to deal with.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that changes the culture of when a person comes in, what type of resistance do they feel they're getting, or how easy do they feel it is to work with the town at all levels. And I think that's a really, really important point. So, okay, so that's the structure piece that we're going to discuss moving forward. I think there's some really good stuff that we can do with that. The other thing, I'm going to use a contemporary example for this. So minor changes to a special permit. So we had an applicant come to us, it's all in the public record, a special permit application for a dog grooming business on Route 6 in the commercial zone. And going through the special permit process, everything that she submitted to us as far as her business hours, the number of dogs she was going to have, the type of business and the details of the business is put in the land record once we approved it. And if she wanted to come back and say, well, you know what, instead of, I'm just using arbitrary numbers, instead of being open from 9 to 5, I want to be open from 8 to 6 and make a minor change. The way that our regulations are structured, any change to a special permit that's been approved has to go through the entire special permit process again. the $600 fee, the public hearing, all of that. So one of the things that we would like to tackle is any minor changes to special permits. Instead of having the person go through all of that again, having a mechanism, whether it's coming in front of us and an up or down vote or something similar to that, being able to change those more administratively instead of having the burden of that special application process. That is a real issue that people are having to deal with in town. And I think it's something that we can change and again, make life easier for everyone.
Well, I think also, we just had it this evening, we had a playground piece, basically wanting to be planted on the property, and they had to go through a special permit again. There's time, thank goodness that the town waived the fee, I appreciate that, I really do.
On that one, that's not even a permanent structure either, you know, that's gonna just be a seasonal thing that's gonna be removed from his property. You know, he'll be putting it in storage, it's like,
I think this
it's
is.
tough, because, you know, money's invested into that, and it's put away in his building, and he has nothing to do, you know, it's.
Well, I think it's a good example of what we wouldn't have wanted to have to go through the special permit process.
Right.
Could a minor change be, the fee be waived for a minor change?
But I think that we
If
would,
you're talking of going from 9 to 5 to 8 to 4,
yeah.
Right,
that's a minor change.
I don't think there should be a fee on that, should there?
The way that we're talking about changing it, there would be no fee, there would be no public hearing, it would just be.
Don, the problem is if it is a special permit application, we did have to publish, we had the time, the waiting period, and we had to publish it in a newspaper and pay the advertising fee. So most of the special permit fee covers the cost of the advertising. So, yeah, we could waive the fee and then it's a negative impact on the budget of the town. So by not having the special permit fee in the first place, we don't have to advertise it, and it would be something that we think is reasonable for the commission to review.
And at the end of the day, it's gotta be common sense. I mean, should that really, and I think the last couple of meetings went well when Steve first came to us. And there were some questions, well, there's almost some comments of why can't you just do that, right? Why can't you just do it? Why do you have to go through the special application, special permit process? And we have to ask ourselves why we're making people do that. And that's like, it's within the regulations, like we don't have any other choice legally the way they are now. And I think that we can change that. And that's an example of how we can do that. So that's the second piece. The third piece is very similar to the second one. Ways to streamline the permitting process for businesses in a commercial zone by evaluating which business types truly need to be subject to a special permit. So this is something that we really need to think strongly about moving forward. Is the current method of enumerating specific business types, which so here's how we have it now. So I'm sure everybody knows this, just to reiterate it on the record. So it's written into our regulations that in a commercial zone, if a business type is not enumerated, it is subject to a special permit application. Okay. That means that if it's not allowed, if it's not specifically allowed, it's not allowed, which is how we do it. Now, the problem that occurs is that you can have an applicant with a reasonable, normal type of business going to a commercial zone that on the face of it, you're like, why do they need to go through the special permit application process? Well, they have to because that's how it's written. Because if it's not enumerated as one of those acceptable businesses, they have to go through the process. So I think what we're looking to do is to evaluate that list of acceptable businesses and say, all right, why don't we focus on the ones that are really, really unacceptable and say, can the others be just rolled into either like a site plan or a simpler process where we don't have the whole special permit application process that the applicant has to go through? It's an easier type of permitting situation. Because if we're trying to list everything that's acceptable, your list could be, it could be dozens and dozens and hundreds of different business types. It's much easier to say, these are the ones that really, really we need to focus on. And this is the reason why, and those go through a special application process. It's almost a reverse of looking at it, how we do it now. So that, I'm looking forward to getting you some details on that one as well, specifically, because we are legally putting ourselves, legally through the regulations, binding our applicants to a certain process. Right, so how can we change those regulations to make it easier, the structure definition, the minor changes to a special permit application, and then evaluating the acceptable businesses and how we can maybe change the permitting processes in a commercial zone to really foster the you know, the economic development of the town and making things easier.
Are there other towns or municipalities that have done something similar that would provide a kind of outline of how to do this? Or what to do this, because this all sounds very common sense. And I'm just wondering if there are other places within Connecticut or even New England that have gone as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there have, John, because I'm sure you can speak to this. I mean, in my experience, you have a spectrum where you have some town, one town in Connecticut who does not have any townwide zoning. And everything's left up to the state zoning, and then you have really aggressive zoning as far as regulating everything. And then nationally, there's a lot of places that don't have zoning at all. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in how we can do it, and John's been very helpful with examples of other towns and other types of situations. I don't know if you want to speak to any of that, but.
No, I think, I mean, there are, as Justin said, there are examples of whatever you want to do, you can sort of point to other towns that have done it that way. And I think, Justin, what we're talking about is basically ratcheting down the permit requirements. For, you know, specific uses in specific areas. And I think, you know, the approach that I've taken with Justin and sort of advising the regulations committee is let's start with what you want to do or what you think is not working, and then we can pull in all kinds of examples. But, you know, ideally make this as simple as possible for, you know, to basically make it as easy as possible to do the things that you want to have happen in those areas, and basically make it as hard as possible for those things that you don't want, you know, and then it's basically just turning the dial, you know, this way or that. But yeah, there's lots of examples.
So you can get info from how other people have accomplished it.
Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Sure. Oh, yes.
I want to thank Justin and Rick. You know, what's running through my mind, and most of you guys, well, some of us were here back 2 years back, when we went through this whole thing on structure with, particularly around the lake and the distance, are you running into that? You know, we're trying to figure out stories, and I don't know how many months we kicked that around.
Yeah, and I don't think we resolved it.
We didn't resolve it. Have you had any discussions on it?
Oh, I've had some discussions. The discussion for me, and I'm not gonna speak for Rick or Walter or anyone else, but for me is things that we cannot have. I'm not looking for answers to questions like that, like what should the heights be, what should setbacks be, or certain specifics. I'm not saying there should be a book somewhere with a scientific reason as to why the number should be what it is, but we have to have a good reason as to why the number is what it is.
Exactly.
Right? And if we cannot explain to the public to say, you have to meet this regulation, but we can't tell them why in good confidence, we are better off to not regulate it. Within reason. So I don't want anybody to misinterpret me and say, oh, he doesn't want any regulation. But you know what I mean? It has to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, we must have kicked this around 6 months. Am I exaggerating?
I know, I think it's about 2 years at least.
Maybe more. And I think.
But I think what we're trying to get at though is just, you know, using what we have for setbacks. But just simplifying it for everybody, you know, as in structures, you know, they're considering you dropping a 5-gallon bucket on your lawn, a structure. Technically, that's what it's saying.
I'm not talking about 5-gallon buckets. I'm talking about structures that are 30 feet high.
Well, that's in the
And
zoning
town says-
regulations.
The town says 30 feet is okay, but 32 feet isn't. And when you get done with the construction, it's a 34. You know, this is what we ran into because people would, you know, they would take
Well,
their measurements where they wanted to maximize what they wanted to do, not necessarily what We wanted them to.
Yeah, I think the stuff that we're tackling first allows us to build that foundation to answer those questions later, because I think.
Right,
But I see you're concerned with the same thing that I am. It's like if 30 feet is good, but 32 isn't, like, give me a reason why, right?
Okay.
I know that's the thing, but that's how I'm approaching, I know that's how we're approaching it, is to say,
But you
what
can
makes
always make
sense?
that argument. You get to 35 and somebody wants to do 36,
That's
and
right.
then somebody wants to do 37.
And then there has to be a compelling argument as to why that's not,
So in other words, we could allow somebody to build a 100-foot tower on their property.
which we're not now, and none of
We're
the,
not now, I realize it, but
well,
if you get rid of the regulation, I don't know how you regulate.
we're not getting rid of the regulation.
I don't think that was proposed whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a revision to the regulation.
we never did resolve it, did we?
Pardon me?
We never did resolve it.
No, we did.
Yeah, we did.
We resolved a lot of things and we did have a reason why, and we were able to explain why it was not going over that height threshold.
right.
And we went over that, beyond that, and through it and every which way around it, and we had the pre-construction
No, we,
measurements versus modified measurements versus
we did
in the
define,
middle of excavation measurements. We did all.
The whole thing hinged around where the datum was that you took the measurement for.
That's right.
That should be, that should be definition of a pin location and elevation.
Yeah, not easy.
well, we did resolve it. And it may need revisiting in the future, but we did put a lot of time in and we came to an agreeable resolution that I think.
Okay.
Right.
For every year, you just get the datum on a flat lot. The problem came in when you had a slope.
Yeah, so,
Correct. And we did look into that, and I don't think we're proposing digging into that now.
No.
And if we ever need to dig into it, please bring it up, we'll dig into it some more. You know, I don't think that's pretty, I think the current regulation works really well for the immediate area that's sloping around the lake. And then when you get out to larger lots away from the lake, it's highly limiting in a negative way. But that's an issue for another day.
Yeah, but the overall, the overall sense of, if we're going to make a change, or we're going to propose something, let's make sure that we understand why we're doing it.
I agree.
Explain it, I think that's an overarching theme to what we're doing as well, because.
You know, Justin, that's the first time anyone's ever said, we need to also justify why we have a regulation, why we have it. And I think that's a really important concept to never lose sight of or.
We had that.
yeah, I think that, you know, part of it is because some of the regulations have been modified and put in place many years ago, and we don't know what the rationalization was for something that was done in 1975. Does that finally predate you?
Careful.
But, you know, really.
Hey, I'm not the oldest guy. in that commission.
35 feet
Okay.
was probably
I'm
the height of most
not trying to be facetious,
colonial
but
houses.
it's very tough to go back and figure out what the rationale was, some of the breaks from way back then.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the maximum height of, the firefighting equipment available.
Right.
That, you know, if they can't get to 45 feet or 50 feet or something like that, then that's a problem.
Right, yeah, I think that's such a good part of the conversation, because if we can point to something that, at the end of the day, if there has to be a regulation, we have to be able to explain it. to
Yeah,
people.
I agree.
And I think the other thing that I've been very helpful with John about, and he's been very willing to help with, is I look forward to having this conversation more, because it's just good to get it out in the open. Because sometimes we need to evaluate what we've done in the past, and is it relevant now, and how do we get to the future? But the other thing too is that as we add regulations or make changes, how does that cascade farther out into the broader regulatory structure? So are we making a change now that's a good change, it's well intentioned, but it affects 3 or 4 other things somewhere else in the regulations negatively?
Right.
So one of the things that John and I are doing on our one-on-one meetings is saying, okay, let's propose this, but let's just go through everything and make sure that we're not
Yeah,
missing
because
something else up.
that rears its ugly head too.
Every time you pull a thread, something gets.
Yeah,
So, and when you don't do that, then that becomes a burden.
because we've come across a number of things over the years where we do something and then, you know, down the line, we see where it contradicts what was done before.
Yes.
And that's something that I think we really want to make inherent to this process, is understanding how everything affects everything else holistically. So I'll leave it at that. I'm really excited about getting some of this stuff moved forward. I think it's gonna be very good for the town. Again, we're in a great place to improve communication, to make the culture better so that people don't feel, you know, threatened by the regulations, so that they make sense. And it's, for me, my personal goal is just to make it a continuous thing. So we're always looking at it. So that's kind of where we're at.
Good idea.
Anything else, Justin, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for all the work you've done. Communications and reports, anything that we need to bring up?
The one thing that I would just remind commissioners, and I put this here, I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Just remind you that all commissioners are expected to get 4 hours of training in land use issues, land use law by the end of December of this year, 2023. Of those 4 hours, 1 hour has to deal with fair and affordable housing. So right now, I would strongly recommend viewing of the Land Use Academy training that's provided by Yukon Extension. They have 3 separate 1.5 hour modules, one on bias, predisposition, and conflicts, the second on running a meeting and making a decision, and third on fair and affordable housing. Those are available online, on demand. And so they can be viewed, if you go to clear.yukon.edu, and I think I've sent this to the commissioners in the past, I can do it again. /LUA for Land Use Academy /advanced.
Okay, I missed it. You got
clear.yukon.edu /LUA, that stands for Land Use Academy, /advanced.
advanced.
Right, because this is the advanced training. And if you go to that website, which is on here on the screen right now, there are links to the 3 sessions.
So it's about 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours.
This is gonna be a short meeting tonight. I expect you to all do 1.5 hours tonight.
We're gonna stay here and do it.
Yeah.
So once you do those, if you'd please email me to indicate that you have
Done.
done them. And then basically, there's no reporting to the state. It's basically, this commission has to report to the Board of Selectmen that its commissioners have been so trained.
Okay.
How many credits for course?
Excuse me. Those are 1.5 hours each. It's basically, you are required for 4 hours total. Each of these are 1.5 hours.
All right.
So you would have done your mandatory 4 hours.
How much was, I attended the offline, the lawyers fest there, they talk about all the.
Oh, the Connecticut Bar?
Yeah,
You did that?
yeah.
Okay, that counts as well.
Oh, it
This
does.
is not the only thing that does
Yeah,
count.
okay,
Any land use training can count.
yeah.
But we just need to,
Credits is that good?
that was a whole day, I think. That was covered. So if you just send me an email that indicates that you participated.
Would that cover the fair and affordable housing motion?
I think they only did a half an hour.
So
So you would still need to do a half an hour. You still need to do a half an hour of affordable housing.
Okay.
So we can do the one of these modules plus the
The
bar.
Connecticut Bar, yeah.
There's no cost to this.
This is free and available.
Just that.
But, and so there are other trainings that would count, but I think this is just, like, that is specifically set up to take care of your.
Yeah, you got Richards and you got Brants and
And you have Ken Slater, the other one.
yeah, you got a good crew.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, they have,
So-
they have.
There are other ways to satisfy the requirement, but this is just packaged, boom, 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 you're done.
Sent us before to a bunch of, land use academy, it was like. Half a day, of course.
Yeah, and the Connecticut Bar does have their own thing that, you know, you come just packaged it, you're done.
Okay, anything else? We move this along. Anything else the commission wants to bring up?
The fees for putting, stuff in the paper for, special permit, is that a state requirement?
Yes, it's a state statute.
Now, is there any
That requires an
chance that that's gonna be changed considering
what the circulation of papers are now?
Yeah, where it was, if I can, yeah, it's fine. So I am the legislative liaison for the Connecticut Planning Association. And, getting removal of newspaper notice has been on the top of our list for years. We got a little bit closer this year, and there was actually a court case in Old Saybrook, the borough of Fenwick, if you're familiar with that, where Catherine Hepburn used to live.
Yeah.
There is literally no newspaper of substantial circulation for Fenwick. So it is impossible for the borough of Fenwick to satisfy the state statutory requirement, because there is no newspaper. So it's starting to bubble up and yeah, like, if you actually polled people, our newspaper of record in Columbia is basically the Chronicle, Wilmette
I
Chronicle.
assume that's the one we use.
That's what we use,
Yeah.
and so they can charge
And look at their circulation.
whatever they want.
Yeah,
And I doubt that there's probably substantial circulation in Columbia.
So there's nothing in Fenwick,
There is no substantial newspaper of circulation in Fenwick.
that's fine.
So,
although I must say, my wife reads it and she tells me
right, so, but the thing is with the Chronicle, it's just they use their online version anyway.
Right.
So there's really, what's the benefit to a hard copy newspaper?
and to me, that's the big driver for the reason we have a $600 fee for. a
Yeah,
special
because they
permit.
can charge whatever they want.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a case, the town of Hamden was redoing their ordinance book or something like that, and was charged $30,000 for the legal notice.
Gosh.
But because it's a state statute, there's no
limit.
alternative.
that's crazy.
So, the chair of planning and development, Elena Cavros de Gras from Canton, is proposing to look at this in this.
Please.
You're working.
Thank you.
Forward.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? Audience and citizens, anything anyone would like to bring up to us? Thank you. We don't have an executive session. We need to go into beyond what we discussed last meeting. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?
There's no UConn basketball.
You voted yes.
Vote yes.
That's unanimous.
I don't know, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
And John, you have it that I was seated for the entire session.
Thanks, Jim.